She thought the porch cameras were just for show. They were not. Everyone in this town believed the big house belonged to my son. It did not. One slap this morning. One stroke of my pen this afternoon. By sundown, the sheriff would be at my gate, and she would finally learn who actually signs the deeds on this street. My name is Eleanor Whitcomb. At 68 years old, I am what the residents of Mapleborough consider a fixture. I am the widow with the silver hair, the one who lives in the large white colonial on the corner, the one they assume is retired, living quietly off a pension and tending to her hydrangeas. They see a woman in her twilight. They do not see the truth. This morning, the air on my porch was cold, carrying the damp scent of fallen leaves. Sloane was standing too close to me, her anger a sharp, metallic thing in the quiet New England air. Sloane Archer Whitcomb, my daughter-in-law. She is 34, a law graduate who found more profit in becoming a lifestyle influencer. She possesses a cutting charm and eyes that are significantly colder than the October morning. The argument, like most of our arguments, was about access. She wanted a permanent set of spare keys to the carriage house, the guest house where she and my son live. I simply do not understand the problem, she said, her voice tight with impatience. She was dressed for one of her videos, in cream-coloured cashmere that probably cost $2,000. Gavin and I are family. We should not have to ask permission to enter our own home. It is not your home, Sloane, I said, my voice even. It is my guest house. You are living there under a lease agreement. The agreement is clear. My son, Gavin, was, as usual, not present. At 38, he is a polished corporate attorney at Bracken and Wills, a man defined by his image, his ambitions, and his profound avoidance of any conflict that might smudge the glossy surface of his life. He leaves the unpleasantries to his wife. The lease, she scoffed. A short, ugly sound. We are talking about brand partnerships. Eleanor, we have collaborators visiting next week. What am I supposed to say that my mother-in-law locks us out? It is terrible family optics. The optics are not my concern. The terms of the lease are... She stepped closer, moving into the gap between the two large porch pillars, partially obscuring us from the street. A smirk pulled at the corner of her mouth. It was a look of pure, satisfied condescension. She glanced quickly toward the street, then back at me. You really do not get it? Do you, old woman? Her hand moved so fast I barely registered the intent. It was not a wild swing. It was a short, sharp, calculated strike. The crack of her palm against my cheek echoed in the enclosed space. My head snapped to the side. A bright, sharp sting blossomed instantly. I tasted the faint, metallic tang of blood from where my tooth had cut the inside of my lip. She leaned in, her expensive perfume, something heavy with sandalwood, filling my lungs. This house, this entire property, practically belongs to us, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Gavin is the future of this family. You are just the past. My brand, our brand, depends on this image. Stop getting in the way. A car slowed on the street. Mrs. Henderson, walking her golden retriever. She paused, her head tilted, clearly sensing the tension even if she could not see the details. Sloane's transformation was instantaneous and terrifyingly smooth. She stepped back, her entire posture shifting into one of solicitous concern. Her voice, when it came out, was honeyed and bright, loud enough to carry across the lawn. "Oh, Eleanor, are you all right? You stumbled. You nearly gave me a fright." She reached out, as if to steady me. I took a deliberate step back, refusing her touch. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I slowly raised my hand and touched the stinging skin of my cheek. I looked directly into her eyes, holding her gaze until the fake smile on her face began to twitch. My silence was a wall she had not anticipated. She opened her mouth, ready to layer another lie onto the morning air. Before she could speak, I reached into the pocket of my heavy silk robe, the one I had put on precisely for this meeting. My fingers closed around a thick, sealed, legal-sized envelope. It was heavy with paper. I did not take it out. I just let my hand rest on it, a solid reassurance against my hip. Sloane's eyes flickered to the movement, confused. From above the front door, a polite, digital chime sounded. Once, then twice. It was the doorbell camera, confirming it had successfully recorded and saved the last 30 seconds of audio and video. The other two cameras, the ones nestled in the porch rafters, had already finished uploading their footage to the secure cloud server, the one registered not to me, but to an entity she had never heard of. Sloane sees what everyone else in Mapleborough sees the quiet widow, a woman whose most significant daily decision is which roses to prune. They see just a gardener with a pension. They see a relic, someone whose assets are likely a dusty portfolio and this oversized house, a burden she is probably struggling to maintain. This public facade has been my armor for the last decade, a comfortable grey cloak I pulled on, believing it was a form of peace. It was, I see now, a form of negligence. The truth is a different document entirely. For 42 years, I was not a gardener. I was the general counsel, and later the board chair, for the Elmspire Land and Home Conservancy. We were a private housing trust, operating with deliberate discretion. While others built shiny glass towers, we acquired, restored, and managed properties that held communities together. We dealt in historic districts, complex zoning laws, and multi-generational land disputes. My job was not to be seen. My job was to ensure the foundation never cracked. Decades spent navigating hostile negotiations and dense regulatory frameworks taught me the precise geometry of leverage. I learned that timing is not an art, it is a science. I learned that the person who controls the paper trail controls the outcome. Every signature, every addendum, every time-stamped email builds a fortress. My influence was not measured in headlines. It was measured in quiet, off-record lunches at the old faculty club, mentoring young planners who would one day rewrite city codes, or advising legal minds who would eventually become judges. The impact was always on the record, even if the hand guiding it was not. I did not need my name on a plaque. I needed the zoning changed, the trust secured, the predatory lender blocked. When my husband, Arthur, died, the grief was a vast, silent ocean, but the mechanics of my mind did not stop. While Gavin was busy accepting condolences and admiring the gloss of his new inheritance prospects, I was restructuring. I spent 6 months meticulously moving assets, liquidating what was sentimental but vulnerable, and shielding what was essential. This house, the carriage house, the condo Gavin lives in downtown, and several other properties are not owned by Eleanor Whitcomb. They are owned by a layered series of limited liability companies. Hearthline Holdings, LLC, is the landlord. Copperfinch LLC holds the note on my son's mortgage. The Mapleborough Trust Company manages the land itself. It is clean, it is legal, it is impenetrable. and they never bothered to look. Gavin never asked. He is a good attorney in his field, but he has no patience for the meticulous, unglamorous work of trusts and property law. He prefers the shine of corporate litigation. He saw a will, saw a number he liked, and assumed the details were handled. Sloane, with her law degree, should have known better. But she was too busy assessing the value of my silverware and the square footage of the estate. She never listened. Not really. She heard mother-in-law and assumed dependent. They both assumed. I let them. I stayed small. I allowed them to believe I was fading, that my world had shrunk to the borders of my garden. I did it to keep the peace with a son who craves glossy surfaces, a son who is deeply uncomfortable with the complex, often sharp-edged realities of his mother's strength. He wanted a mom, soft and uncomplicated. For a long time, I tried to be that for him, but my arthritis, which flares in my hands on mornings like this, has taught me a late and painful lesson. Smallness invites erasure. When you make yourself invisible to keep others comfortable, they soon begin to believe you are truly not there. You become a ghost in your own home, a piece of furniture they can drape their coats over. The disrespect has been a long, slow accumulation, like silt clouding a clear river. The jokes about aging smells when I cooked Arthur's favourite stew, the accidental shredding of my invitation to the Historical Society Gala, which Sloane was then invited to speak at. The whisper campaign, subtle but persistent, about my forgetfulness. Today's slap was not the beginning. It was merely the last bead on a very long strand. It was the moment the silt finally choked the water, and it was the moment they forgot, fatally, who built the dam. Sloane's public-facing life is a meticulously curated performance. If you follow her online, you are watching a woman who champions ethics in style. Her video reels are filmed in warm, honeyed tones, filtered to look like a permanent golden hour. Her captions are always carefully chosen. Hashtags like kindness is chic or authentic living. She speaks often about community, sustainability, and the importance of being genuine, usually while modeling a $4,000 handbag she received for free. The Sloane I interact with when the cameras are off is a different entity entirely. The honeyed voice becomes brittle and sharp. The ethics evaporate. When she looks at me, she does not see a person. She sees a branding obstacle. My home, the one Arthur and I built over 40 years, is dismissed as cluttered with old people decor. She once told Gavin, right in front of me, that he needed to manage my presence, warning him that my aging smells might be a brand safety issue if her collaborators came to the main house. She uses the language of corporate risk management to describe her husband's mother. Her contempt is matched only by her fraudulence. The guest house, which she and Gavin live in under a formal, albeit generous, lease agreement, has become a revolving door. The lease, drafted by Hearthline Holdings, is explicit, no subletting, no commercial use. Yet, for months, I have watched strangers with rolling suitcases arrive on Friday and leave on Sunday. When I first inquired, Sloane smiled that tight, bright smile, and called them cousin visits. My security, however, is not as trusting. She is illegally subletting the guesthouse loft during major conferences and alumni weekends. These are short-term stays, booked through a discreet platform under a false name, netting her thousands in untaxed, cash-in-hand income. This unauthorized traffic has consequences. The Maple Borough Homeowners Association, An entity whose bylaws I helped draft 3 decades ago has strict rules on non-resident traffic and noise complaints. The fines, addressed to Gavin as the listed family contact, started arriving 2 months ago. They never reach him. My porch cameras, the ones she believes are just for show, have clear, time-stamped footage of Sloane retrieving the mail from the box at the end of the drive. I have watched her sort through it right there, pull out the HOA envelopes, and shred them before she even walks inside. But her deception goes deeper than violating a lease or hiding neighborhood fines. Sloane is a thief, and she is not particularly sophisticated about it. It took my contacts very little time to find the paper trail. She established a shell company, a shadow LLC named Harbor Bliss Media. It exists only as a post office box in Delaware and a bank account. She has been forging vendor tax forms, the 1099s, billing her own brand partners for consulting services from Harbor Bliss. She approves the invoices herself, effectively skimming a significant percentage off the top of every ad campaign she manages. Even her kindness is a monetization strategy. Last spring, she staged a massive charity giveaway for a local women's shelter. She solicited donations from dozens of local businesses, filming reels where she thanked them for their generosity. 3 weeks later, my investigator found more than half of those donated items, designer handbags, high-end electronics, spa certificates listed for sale on a high-end flips site. The anonymous seller account was linked back to her Fixer phone. She keeps 2 phones. One is for the brands, the public, the glossy Instagram posts. The other is for the fixers, the resale sites, and the quiet, dirty logistics of her life. The financial fraud is impersonal. It is business. The personal attacks are what required this response. For the last 8 months, a rumor has been circulating through Mapleborough. It is insidious. It starts as a whisper. Eleanor seems to be slipping mentally. It escalates. She seems unsafe living alone in that big house. And finally, it lands on the intended goal. Gavin and Sloane are worried she needs assisted living. It was designed to isolate me, to paint me as incompetent, a burden. It was meant to build a public narrative that would justify them eventually taking control of my assets. This was not random gossip. It was a campaign. It originated from a single, anonymous email sent to the president of the HOA and 2 of my oldest friends, framed as a note from a concerned neighbor. But Sloane is careless. She thinks technology is just for filters. She does not understand metadata. The email was sent from the public Wi-Fi network at the exclusive gym she belongs to. The metadata attached to the original file, however, resolved to a specific device, a high-end tablet. A tablet whose unique MAC address I had already logged, weeks ago, connecting to my own guest house Wi-Fi network. She sent the email at 10:15 in the morning, the exact same time she routinely posts her post-workout reflection videos. She was attempting to strip me of my credibility and my home, all while sipping a $5 green juice. The moment I saw the metadata on Sloane's email, the game changed. Her attempt to paint me as incompetent was not just an insult, it was a tactical error. It provided me with the perfect cover to build my defense. 2 days later, I drove myself to Boston. I did not go to my longtime family doctor, who Sloane might have tried to charm or influence. I went to 2 separate, highly regarded neurological clinics where I had no prior history. I paid in full, under my own name, for comprehensive cognitive evaluations. I sat for hours, completing memory tests, logical reasoning puzzles, and spatial awareness exercises. The results were, as I expected, stellar. Both reports concluded my cognitive function was in the 95th percentile for my age group. I had the official, notarized documents couriered to my attorney's office, not my home. The foundation for any claim of my slipping was now legally obliterated. Next, I addressed my own estate. I updated my living will and my durable power of attorney. The originals had, years ago, listed Gavin as the primary agent. The new documents are far more structured. My primary agent is now the executor of my trust, a professional fiduciary from a bonded Boston firm. My longtime attorney is the secondary. No family member is named. It is not an act of malice. It is an act of prudence. The POA is designed to protect my assets from my family, not for them. With my own defences secured, I turned my attention to the guest house. I engaged Roan and Tiller Risk Advisors, a firm I used to retain at Elmspire for sensitive internal audits. They are discreet, expensive, and ruthlessly thorough. Their task was simple: a full forensic review of the carriage house, focusing on utilities and digital access. They analysed the smart lock logs for the past 6 months. The logs showed dozens of unique, short-term entry codes being generated and deleted, often within 48-hour windows, none of which corresponded to Gavin's or Sloane's primary codes. They cross-referenced this with the utility bills. The water and electricity usage for the guest house spiked precisely during these cousin visit weekends, consistent with multiple occupants, not one or two. I confirmed that my doorbell and porch cameras were functioning as designed, set to redundant cloud backups. The footage is not stored on a personal account under my name. It is filed under the entity account for Hearthline Holdings, the same LLC that owns the property. The chain of custody for the footage is legally pristine. Then, I engaged Bonnet and Reed Property Counsel, the sharpest real estate litigators in the state. I sent them the original lease agreement for the guest house, the one Sloane had insisted was just a formality for family housing. The report they sent back was a masterpiece of cold, legal precision. The violations were numerous and material. First, the unauthorized subletting, a clear breach of Section 4. Second, the repeated HOA violations, which constituted nuisance conduct under Section 9. Third, minor property damage to the loft flooring, noted in a cleaner's report, which she had ignored. And fourth, and most critically, the incident on the porch. The lease contains a standard clause regarding harassment or assault against the landlord or their agents. Sloane's SLAP had just activated it. While the lawyers were drafting the initial notices, I made one final, quiet move. Through Copperfinch LLC, one of my other holding companies, I located the mortgage note for Gavin's city condo, the one he and Sloane used during the week. The original lender, a regional bank, was happy to sell the note at a slight premium to an anonymous trust. Copperfinch LLC now holds my son's debt. He is, in effect, my tenant in 2 places, though he only knows about one. It is a piece of leverage I hope never to use, a financial firewall in case things become truly unspeakable. The preparations are now complete. A sheriff's civil unit has been pre-briefed by my attorney for a same-day standby service, pending a judge's signature. A bonded locksmith is on call, scheduled for a priority rekeying job. And the HOA manager, a meticulous man who despises rule breakers, is prepped and waiting for my email. The moment he receives it, he will suspend all amenity access fobs tied to the guest house, including the pool, the gym, and the main gate. Everything is in its place. The entire system is waiting for one word from me. The slap this morning was the sound of a fault line finally giving way, a crack that had been widening for years. It began not with Sloane, but with Gavin. After Arthur's funeral, when the house was still suffocatingly full of wilting flowers. Gavin sat across from me in this very study. He was distraught, not just with grief, but with ambition. His firm was offering him a partnership track, but it required significant seed capital, a buy-in he could not afford. He begged me for the money, not as a son asking for help, but as a businessman pitching an investment. I was still raw, still seeing Arthur's ghost in the chair beside him, but I recognized the desperation. I funded him. I transferred a significant sum to his account. And because I am who I am, I had him sign a formal, low-interest promissory note. It was a simple document, a standard loan agreement. He signed it, barely reading it, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes, as if the paperwork was a needless, insulting formality. He never made a single payment. He treated it as a gift, an inheritance advanced. I never pressed him. I filed the note away, telling myself the paperwork was just a just-in-case, a relic of my old life. I see now it was the first receipt in a collection I did not yet know I was building. Then came Sloane, their first Thanksgiving here. She moved through my dining room like an appraiser. She picked up a piece of my grandmother's sterling silver flatware, weighed it in her palm, and frowned. "This is lovely. Eleanor," she said, her voice dripping with false brightness. "But a bit dated for the kind of entertaining Gavin needs to do. We should really consider editing this whole vibe." Later that evening, I overheard her speaking to Gavin by the fireplace. He was worried about a mixer for high-net clients. "The problem, darling," she said, "is we might need to edit your mother's presence. She's sweet, but she doesn't exactly scream multi-million-dollar portfolio." I swallowed my pride. I told myself she was young, insecure, trying to establish her territory. I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I gripped the warm porcelain of a teacup. It was 2 weeks later that the first rumour appeared. A call from an old friend on the library board. "Eleanor," she asked, her voice laced with an uncomfortable, hesitant pity. "Are you feeling all right? I heard you had a little spell. Got lost driving home from the market." I had done no such thing, but the story stuck. The invitations began to dry up. First, it was the small luncheons. Then, it was the spring gala for the Conservancy, an event I had co-chaired for 15 years. I was not uninvited. Precisely. I was simply overlooked. My name was missing from the committee list, and my invitation never arrived. Instead, I saw a picture in the Maple Borough Gazette the following week. Sloane, standing at the podium, her hand on Gavin's arm, accepting an award on behalf of the Whitcomb family's new generation of philanthropy. She was actively editing me from my own life, replacing my presence with her own. So I began to skip the town gatherings I was invited to. The sting of their pity, the whispers when I entered a room, was too much to bear. I stayed home. I tended my garden. I read my books. And just like that, the story of my decline became a self-fulfilling wallpaper. I had withdrawn, and my withdrawal was taken as proof of my incompetence. Sloane did not have to push me out. She just had to make the outside world so hostile that I would lock the door myself. I thought no one saw. I thought I was entirely alone in this. Then, one afternoon last summer, a small, cream-coloured envelope appeared in my mailbox, tucked inside a seed catalogue. It was not addressed, just my name. Eleanor, written on the front in a strong, clear hand. Inside was a single sheet of notepaper. Dear Eleanor, it read, we see more than you think. The whispers are not true, and some of us know where they come from. I'm around if you ever need a witness. Your neighbour, Maribel. Maribel. From 3 houses down. A woman I had only ever exchanged pleasantries with over the fence about tomato blight. I held that note, and for the first time in years, the fog of isolation cleared. I did not cry. I got up, went to my study, and opened my personal safe. I placed Maribel's note next to Gavin's unpaid loan agreement. It was a witness corroboration. It was proof. In my mind, a thin, green ledger page turned. The grief for the son I had lost to ambition. The anger at the woman who saw me as an obstacle. Those emotions were real, but they were not actionable. This was different. This was a file. Respect, I realized, was no longer something I could request. It was something that demanded receipts. The argument, the one that had been simmering for weeks, finally ignited over keys. I need a secondary set of keys. Eleanor, Sloane said. She was standing on my porch, tapping her designer boot on the painted floorboards. I am coordinating new cleaners for the guest house, and I cannot be expected to be here every time they need access. It is inefficient. I kept my voice low, devoid of the anger that was vibrating just beneath my skin. Sloane. The lease is very specific on that point. Section 7. Any third-party vendors, including cleaners, require a written request submitted to the landlord 48 hours in advance, along with a copy of their liability insurance certificate. She laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was sharp and dismissive, like breaking glass. She stepped closer, moving into the space between the pillars, blocking the view from the street. Her voice dropped to that familiar, venomous hiss. You and your pathetic little lease. You are just a bitter old woman who cannot stand to see us happy. You are brand poison. Eleanor, you are an embarrassment. And that is when she slapped me. The sound was flat, a dull thwack that seemed to hang in the damp morning air. The sting was immediate, a bloom of heat across my left cheek. I did not flinch. I did not raise my hand to the mark. I simply held her gaze. I watched the triumphant cruelty in her eyes flicker, just for a fraction of a second, into a wave of panic as she realized what she had done in the open. She did not know, of course, that the open was the most dangerous place for her to be. From the eaves above my head, a small, polite chime sounded. Twice. It was the confirmation. My primary porch camera had captured high-definition video. It had captured the crystal-clear audio of her hissing, brand poison. It had captured the precise waveform analysis of the impact. The GPS timestamp was locked. The file had already completed its auto-upload to the Hearthline Holdings secure cloud server, flagged and categorized. The silence that followed the slap was absolute, broken only by the sound of a distant lawnmower. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson's new doorbell camera, angled perfectly toward my porch, captured the entire motion. 2 houses down, Maribel's driveway cam, installed high on her garage, caught the secondary angle, clear as day. In the quiet, I heard the faint buzz of a neighbor's phone receiving a motion alert, then another. The neighborhood was now a digital witness. Sloane was still breathing hard, her chest rising and falling, trapped between the thrill of her violence and the sudden, chilling realization that I was not crying. I was not yelling. I was not reacting at all. I stepped back, pulling my silk robe tighter. I did not touch my cheek. I simply pulled my phone from my robe pocket. I opened my text messages. A single, clean thread with my lead counsel at Bonnet and Reed Property Council. I typed one word. Go. I pressed send. My phone vibrated almost instantly with the reply. Confirmed. Filing. In that moment, a system I had spent months preparing clicked into inevitable motion. 90 miles away, in his Boston office, my attorney electronically filed the verified notice to quit with the housing court. This was not a friendly request. It cited the specific, material, and incurable breaches of the lease agreement that documented illegal subletting, the pattern of HOA violations, the documented financial waste. And now, the final activating clause, the assault and harassment provision. Simultaneously, he drafted a temporary no trespass directive. This was separate from the eviction. This was for my immediate safety, barring Sloane Archer Whitcomb from the perimeter of my private residence, the main house, the porch where I stood, and the surrounding gardens. The file was routed electronically to the judge on duty for emergency civil matters, Judge Helena Port. Judge Port is not a personal friend. I have not seen her outside a professional function in perhaps 15 years. But she is a professional peer of the old school. She is a woman I mentored briefly when she was a young zoning planner. A woman who, like me, believes in the sanctity of a paper trail and the non-negotiable rule of law. She does not suffer fools, and she despises bullies. My attorney's office, citing the clear video evidence of physical assault against an elderly landlord, requested a same-day hearing for the temporary protective order. The fuse, lit by Sloane's own hand, was now burning down an impossibly short line. The sound of her slap was still ringing in the air, but the gavel was already poised to fall. The strike from my attorney's office landed at precisely 1:18 that afternoon. I know this because I was watching the live feed from the guest house driveway camera, an angle I had installed specifically to monitor the unceasing flow of her illegal sublet traffic. Sloane was in her element, filming a haul video on the small patio. She had a ring light set up, and a mountain of pastel-coloured boxes from high-end designers was piled beside her. She was holding up a pair of shoes, her voice resonating with that manufactured, breathless enthusiasm she reserves for her followers. And the best part, she was saying to her phone, is that they are 100% ethically sourced. A man in a simple blue polo shirt and khaki pants walked into the frame, holding a large manila envelope and a clipboard. He was a professional process server, a man who delivers legal reality for a living. Sloane did not see him at first. When she did, her face froze, the influencer smile dissolving into a mask of irritation. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "I am filming. This is a private residence." "Are you Sloane Archer Whitcomb?" the man asked, his voice flat, ignoring her camera. "I am. And you are trespassing." "No, ma'am," he said, extending the envelope. "I am serving you." The camera was still recording. Her ring light illuminated the entire transaction. She snatched the envelope from his hand. "What is this? You cannot just—" He was already holding out the clipboard. "I need your signature confirming receipt of service." Sloane looked at the thick envelope, a flicker of genuine confusion in her eyes. Then she scoffed, a short, ugly sound. "Is this from her? Is this a joke? You cannot evict family, you idiot!" The process server did not blink. He simply tapped the clipboard, I am not an idiot, ma'am, and I would suggest you read the name of the landlord on page 1. He waited. Her eyes narrowed. She tore open the envelope, her manicured thumb ripping the paper. Her camera was still live, capturing her face as she scanned the first page, the official notice to quit. She read it, then read it again, her lips moving silently. I could see the exact moment her brain registered the words. Hearthline, Holdings, LLC, she whispered, the words confused. My work is done, the server said. He made a note on his own form, documenting her refusal to sign, turned, and walked away. Sloane stood there, the papers trembling in her hand. Her phone was still streaming live video to her thousands of followers. She fumbled for it, ending the broadcast with a panicked swipe. Then, alone on the patio, she began to read. She was not just served a notice. She was served with the entire case. I had instructed Bonnet and Reed to attach the primary exhibits. It was a paper avalanche. She would have seen the smart lock logs first. Page after page of them, printed in stark, clinical columns. Dozens of unauthorized guest codes, each one time-stamped, dated, and now correlated with the spikes in utility usage. Next, the printouts from the short-term listing sites. Pictures of her guest house, her furniture, listed under the pseudonym Maple Retreat, and the exhibit summary, prepared by Roan and Tiller, explaining how the EXIF data from the listing photos matched the metadata embedded in the reels she had filmed on her own phone. A rookie, digital mistake. Then, the copies of the HOA complaints, 3 months of them. Fines for noise, fines for unauthorized traffic, and attached to one, a draft of an angry response, scrawled in the margin in her distinctive, loopy handwriting, complaining about the out-of-touch board. A response she had shredded, but which my cameras had filmed her writing. After that, the 2 letters from the Boston neurological clinics. I could imagine her eyes scanning the summary, stellar cognitive function. No evidence of memory impairment? Superior analytical skills? The entire foundation of her whisper campaign, the poor, slipping Eleanor narrative, was vaporized in 2 paragraphs of medical fact. And finally, the last exhibit. A series of high-resolution video stills from the porch camera, taken that morning. Frame 1, her hand pulling back. Frame 2, her face contorted in a smirk. Frame 3, the moment of impact. And beneath it, the waveform analysis from the audio, showing the sharp, undeniable acoustic spike of the slap, clearly distinct from her spoken words. The court date was set for the following week, the minimum statutory window. The filing included a petition for immediate possession based on the assault clause, with a pre-briefed sheriff's unit scheduled for standby, pending the judge's order. As she stood there, paralyzed by the weight of the paper in her hands, 2 other things were happening. A certified mail receipt was being signed by a clerk in the mailroom at Bracken and Wills, delivering a courtesy copy of the entire file directly to my son, Gavin. Simultaneously, a priority email, with all key exhibits attached, landed in his corporate inbox, flagged urgent legal notice. His proof of receipt was recorded at 1:23 p.m. At the Mapleborough HOA office, the manager received my one-word email. He walked to his computer and typed a command. Sloane's access fobs for the gate, the pool, the gym were instantly deactivated. The fines, no longer held in abeyance, were accelerated and attached to the property's file. But the most beautiful cut, the one I had saved, was happening in an office in New York. At 1:30 p.m., Sloane's phone, the one she used for brands, buzzed. It was an email from her primary liaison at the agency that managed her biggest partnership. I knew, because I had seen their correspondence. The subject line was blunt: urgent paused partnership and PR query. The email was short. Sloane, we are seeing chatter online from a video clip this afternoon, and a legal blog has already picked up a housing court filing. We are seeing the terms assault and elder abuse allegations trending in connection with your brand. All campaign activities are paused, effective immediately, pending a full review. We need to know exactly what is going on. Gavin did not call me for 3 hours. 3 hours where the legal notices sat in his inbox, vibrating with a silent, digital hum. When the phone finally rang, his voice was not the polished, confident tone of the corporate attorney I knew. It was thin, strained, and stripped of all its usual gloss. "Mum," he said. "Just that." "Gavin," I replied, my voice even. A long pause. I could hear his breathing, shallow and fast. Can I come over to the house?" "You can come by," I said, looking out the study window at the guest house, where the curtains were drawn tight. "Not with her." "No. God. No. Just me. I am on my way." He arrived 20 minutes later, looking wrecked. His tie was loosened, his hair was out of place, and his eyes were wide with a combination of panic and shame that I had not seen since he was a child. He walked into my study, the same room where he had begged me for seed capital all those years ago, and sank into the leather chair opposite my desk. He did not speak. I poured 2 cups of tea, placed one in front of him, and waited. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the mantel clock. "I asked her," he finally whispered, staring into the teacup as if it held an answer. "I went straight to her after I got the email from your lawyer. I showed her the filing, the part about the slap." He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. "She said it was a lie. She said it was performative, that you were manufacturing evidence. She swore she never touched you. She said you stumbled and she was trying to catch you." He let out a short, broken laugh. "She lied. She lied right to my face." "And then you watched the video," I stated. It was not a question. "My God, Mom, the video." He squeezed his eyes shut. "Your lawyer sent a link to the secure server. It was not just your camera. It was Henderson's. It was Maribel's. 3 different angles." I watched her smirk. I heard what she said. "I watched her strike you. I watched you not even flinch." He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "She did not even know the cameras were real." "She did not bother to look," I said, taking a sip of my tea. "But the rest of it," he continued, his voice cracking. "The exhibits, the loan agreement, from after Dad died. I had forgotten. I signed it. It was my signature, right there at the bottom." He looked around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. "And then I saw the other one, Copper Finch LLC. I did not know the name. I had to look it up. It is the holding company. For my condo. My condo. Mom, you own my mortgage." The panic in his voice was raw. "You have owned it for months. You could have." "I could have," I agreed. "But I did not." The panic in his eyes slowly gave way to a dawning, terrible realization. He understood. It was not a weapon I was sharpening. It was a shield I had been holding. I had kept him safe, secured his asset from the volatility of his own life, and I had never said a word. His shame was a palpable thing in the room. "It gets worse," he said, his voice dropping to a mumble. "While I was driving over here, a junior associate from my firm called me. A conflict check. A new client is in a dispute with a media company, and the name got flagged." He rubbed his face. "Harbor Bliss Media. Sloane's shell company. It is in our system. Mom. Her fraud is in my firm's conflict log. She exposed me. She exposed everything." "You did not know," I said. "But I should have—" He yelled, slamming his hand on the desk, rattling the teacups. "I should have seen it. I did not want to see it." He stood up, pacing the floor. "When I got home, before I called you, I saw the bag. By the garage door. The shredder bag. She'd put tape around it. And her lipstick was on the tape, from where she'd sealed it. I tore it open. It was all there. The HOA letters. The fines. All of them. Just like your lawyer said." He stopped pacing and looked at me. A man, finally, truly unraveled. The polished attorney was gone, and only the sun remained. I slid a thin folder across the desk, the one he had not seen. "These are the smart lock logs, showing the unauthorized guests. These are the utility bills for the spikes in usage. These are the original HOA complaints, date-stamped upon receipt." He looked at the pile of paper. No shouting from me, no accusations, just dates and signatures, just receipts. He sat back down, heavily. The fight had gone out of him, replaced by a deep, profound exhaustion. He stared at the cold tea. "Mum?" he asked, his voice hoarse, so quiet I could barely hear him. Is there a way back from this?" I met his gaze. I held it. "Yes," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "It begins with truth. The housing court was precisely as I remembered it, sterile, smelling of old paper and stale coffee, with unforgiving fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty. I sat in the front row, on the petitioner's side. I was not there as Eleanor Whitcomb, the grieving widow. I was there as the representative for Hearthline Holdings, LLC. My attorney from Bonnet and Reed, a sharp woman named Ms. Davies, sat beside me, 3 perfectly organized binders on the table before her. Gavin was not there. He was not a party to this action. Sloane arrived, not at 9 a.m., but at 9:15, as if to make a point. She was not dressed for court. She was dressed for an audience, in a severe but expensive-looking white suit. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, sleek ponytail. She was flanked by a man who looked less like a property lawyer and more like a high-priced public relations fixer. All polished teeth and a $2,000 watch. Judge Helena Port took the bench. Her face was exactly as I recalled, intelligent, impatient, and utterly impartial. She had no personal ties to my trust work, but she was a product of the same system. She respected facts. Landlord-tenant matter. Hearthline Holdings versus Sloane Archer Whitcomb, the clerk announced. Sloane's PR attorney went first. His voice was smooth, empathetic. He painted a picture of a tragic familial misunderstanding. He used phrases like a devoted daughter-in-law and a beloved, if sometimes confused, matriarch. He suggested this was a simple family spat that had been cruelly escalated into a legal matter by overzealous counsel. He was attempting to try the case in the court of public opinion, not the court of law. Judge Port looked at him over her glasses, her expression unreadable. Counselor, she said, her voice cutting through his performance. Is it your position that the lease agreement is not valid? No, Your Honour, but the context is purely familial. Then let us move on to the petitioner's claims of breach. Ms. Davies. Ms. Davies stood. She did not argue. She presented. It was a surgical, systematic dismantling. Your Honour, we present Exhibit A, the fully executed lease agreement between Hearthline Holdings LLC and the tenant, Sloane Archer Whitcomb. I direct you to Section 4, the No Subletting Clause, and Section 9, the Nuisance Conduct Clause. She moved to the next binder. Exhibit B smart lock logs from the property for the last 6 months, showing dozens of unique short-term access codes. Exhibit C utility records, showing spikes in water and power usage consistent with these codes. Exhibit D cached advertisements for a Maple Retreat short-term rental, with photographs matching the guest house interior, linked via metadata to the tenant's known devices. Sloane's lawyer objected. Hearsay. Your Honour. Speculation. The EXIF data is attached. Counselor. Judge Port said, already scanning the file. It is not speculation. It is data. Please proceed. Ms. Davies. Ms. Davies continued. Exhibit EA collection of formal complaints and fine notices from the Mapleborough Homeowners Association, citing the tenant for breaches of bylaws related to the unauthorized rental traffic. Then she paused, picking up the final binder. And finally, Your Honour, the breach of the harassment and safety clause. We submit Exhibit F video evidence from 3 separate authenticated cameras, recorded yesterday morning. Sloane's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. We move to suppress. This is a violation of privacy. A doctored video, clearly taken out of context to embarrass my client. Your Honour, Ms. Davies interjected calmly. The video authentication and chain of custody reports from a bonded third-party firm are attached. The files were pulled from a commercial entity server, not a personal device. The timestamps are synced. It is airtight. Judge Port peered at the report. The authentication seems in order. I will allow it. Play the primary angle. The courtroom monitor flickered to life. The audio was crystal clear. We heard Sloane's voice. Brand poison. Embarrassing. And then the flat, sharp sound of the slap. The judge watched the multi-angle replay twice without expression. Sloane stared at the table, her face white. Lastly, Your Honour, Ms. Davies said, her voice softening just a fraction. The tenant's defence, as we have seen in correspondence, has been to privately allege that my client, Mrs. Whitcomb, is mentally slipping and incompetent, that these actions are the result of age and confusion. She placed 2 more documents on the judge's desk. Exhibits G and H, 2 independent cognitive evaluations, conducted last month by 2 separate Boston clinics. Both conclude Mrs. Whitcomb is in the superior percentile for cognitive function. We submit these to permanently obliterate the tenant's defamatory smear campaign, which we believe was the predicate for this assault. A low murmur went through the courtroom. Sloane's lawyer was visibly flustered. He stood up, shuffling his papers. Your Honour, this is retaliation. A vindictive action. My client? She had a momentary lapse, a family dispute, and the landlord is retaliating by trying to make her homeless. Judge Port looked at him, and for the first time, her voice was cold. Counselor, I have before me a timeline. The first documented illegal sublet, per Exhibit B, was 6 months ago. The first HOA fine was 3 months ago. The assault was yesterday. The only person who appears to have retaliated is your client, who, upon being denied keys she was not entitled to, chose to physically strike the landlord. She closed the file. The sound was like a door slamming shut. "Judgment," she said. Sloane looked up, her eyes wide. "The lease is valid. The breaches are numerous, documented, and material. The harassment claim is validated by clear and convincing video evidence. The court finds in favor of the petitioner. Hearthline Holdings, LLC. Immediate possession of the property is granted." She continued, her voice a monotone. "A 24-hour vacate order is issued, to be accompanied by a sheriff's civil unit to ensure the peaceful transfer of the premises. A permanent no-contact order is granted, barring the tenant, Sloane Archer Whitcomb, from the main residence, porch, and immediate grounds of the landlord." She looked at Sloane. "All court costs are assigned to the tenant. All outstanding HOA fines are, per the lease, the tenant's sole responsibility and are due immediately." She gathered her files. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Whitcomb, this court commends your measured restraint and the extraordinary thoroughness of your documentation." She then turned her gaze back to Sloane, and her voice was steel. "And Ms. Archer Whitcomb, I would warn you, in the strongest possible terms, against any further attempts to defame the character or capacity of the petitioner. That would be a very, very unwise path to take. We are adjourned." The sun was setting, casting long, amber stripes across the clapboard siding of the house. The air was cool, and the street had fallen into that quiet, anticipatory hum it gets just before twilight. It was not a private moment. Neighbours were on their porches, pretending to read or check the mail. A single sheriff's cruiser was idling at the curb, its lights off, a quiet symbol of authority. A locksmith, a simple van parked behind the cruiser, stood by the guest house gate, his heavy tool bag at his feet. The HOA manager, Mr. Harris, was there too, standing near the cruiser, holding a small stack of papers, the final fob deactivation forms and the accumulated fine notices. Sloane's car turned onto the street too fast. She parked, slamming the door. She stormed up the walkway, her face composed in a mask of brittle, smiling indignation, a look clearly intended for the onlookers. She was performing the role of the victim, wronged by a senile old woman. Then she saw the badge on the sheriff's uniform. Her brittle smile faltered. The performance cracked. Her eyes darted from the sheriff to the locksmith, to Mr. Harris, and finally, to my front door. As if cued by her gaze, I opened the main screen door. I stood in the doorway, calm. I was not in my robe. I was dressed in a simple, cream-coloured linen shirt and dark slacks. My hair was pulled back. My eyes were steady. Sloane stared at me, her face a mixture of confusion and pure, undiluted rage. "You," she spat, "you cannot do this. The court, this is my home." The sheriff took one step forward. "Ma'am, the court has already ruled. We are here to ensure the peaceful execution of a lawful order." I said nothing. I simply reached into the pocket of the silk robe that I had hung just inside the door, the same one I had been wearing that morning. My hand found the thick, sealed envelope I had placed there hours ago, the one my hand had rested on after she struck me. I pulled it out. Sloane's eyes widened. She recognized it. I opened the unsealed flap and calmly slid out the contents. This is the formal eviction notice, as adjudicated by the court this morning, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the quiet air. This is the permanent no trespass letter, informing you that you are barred from this property. And this, I added, holding up the last sheet, is a printed copy of that lovely apology template I found in your files, the one you make your brand interns sign when they make a mistake. I thought it was fitting. I held the papers out. The sheriff took them from my hand and extended them to Sloane. You taught me that optics matter. Sloane, I said, my voice perfectly level. Today, so do signatures. Sloane did not take the papers. She just stared at them, trembling. The sheriff placed them at her feet on the walkway. He nodded to the locksmith. The locksmith moved to the guest house door. Sloane flinched as he inserted his tools into the smart lock, the one she believed only she controlled. The digital access codes died instantly. He began to set up his small, portable drill to change the physical mechanism. The porch light above my head, set on an automatic timer, clicked on, glowing brighter in the fading amber light. A new baseline had been set. Sloane's gaze, desperate now, flew past me, searching for an ally. She saw Gavin. He was standing in the shadows of the main hallway, just behind me. She had not seen him arrive. Gavin, she shrieked, the brittle smile and the anger collapsing into pure panic. Gavin, do something. Tell her stop this. He did not move to help her. He did not step onto the porch. He only took one step forward, just into the light, so she could see his face. His eyes were red, but his expression was resolved. Mum, he said, his voice breaking. I am here. Then he looked directly at his wife. Sloane, he said, and the finality in his voice was devastating. You have to go. That was the final blow. Her face crumpled. The last bit of fight vanished, leaving only a hollow, defeated woman. The locksmith's drill bit into the metal of the lock. The high-pitched whir was the only sound on the street. Sloane finally backed down the steps, one by one, her eyes still fixed on the house she could no longer enter. I looked at her for one last moment. Then I stepped back inside and closed the heavy main door. Gently. The softest sound of victory. A heavy, final click that ended a reign of smirks. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.